I never believed in curses or ghosts or any of that supernatural crap you see in late-night movies, the kind where shadowy figures lurk in the corners of old houses and whisper your sins back at you. No, my world was grounded, practical. Hell, I grew up in a dusty little town called Millfield in southeastern Ohio, where the scariest thing was the occasional tornado warning screeching through the staticky AM radio in my dad's pickup truck, sending us all scrambling to the basement with flashlights and canned beans. We'd huddle there, listening to the wind howl like a banshee, but it always passed, leaving nothing but uprooted trees and a story to tell at the diner. Life was predictable, safe, but that was before the show, before Summit or Surrender, this twisted reality TV spectacle that dangled $1 million prize like a carrot on a stick, split among whoever could claw their way to the top of Mount Kailash in Tibet within 7 grueling days. It was billed as the ultimate endurance test, blending survival challenges with cutthroat voting to whittle down the group, like some unholy mashup of Survivor and The Amazing Race, but set on a forbidden peak that locals whispered about with wide eyes and crossed fingers. We were 10 total strangers, plucked from auditions across the globe and thrown together like chum in shark-infested waters, each of us harboring our own desperate reasons for signing that waiver. I was Jenny Harlan, 28, a fitness trainer from Cleveland who'd spent the last 5 years hustling in sweaty gyms, yelling at clients to push through one more rep while dreaming of something bigger than student loans and a leaky apartment roof. I had more optimism than brains, sure, but also a chip on my shoulder from a string of bad relationships that left me swearing off men, until Mark. He was the one I latched onto right from the casting call in LA, a 34-year-old ex-Marine from Texas, built like a goddamn tank with broad shoulders and scars that told stories he didn't share. His quiet smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes, made you feel like everything would turn out okay, even when the world was falling apart. He'd seen action in Afghanistan, lost buddies, but he carried it with a stoic grace that drew me in like a moth to a porch light. The others were a ragtag bunch of thrill-seekers and fame chasers, each with their quirks that would either bond us or tear us apart. There was Sarah Klein, 25, a bubbly influencer from LA with 1 million TikTok followers, all perfect selfies and sponsored energy drinks, her blonde hair always camera-ready. Tom Reynolds, a 40-something accountant from Chicago with a beer gut that jiggled when he laughed and big dreams of quitting his cubicle job to open a brew pub. Lisa Vargas, 29, a nurse from Miami who talked too much, her stories looping like a bad playlist. Endless tales of ER shifts and ex-boyfriends. Derek Hayes, 32, a cocky rock climber from Colorado, all bravado and chalk-dusted fingers, the type who flexed in every mirror. Mia Chen, 26, quiet and bookish from San Francisco, a librarian with wire-rimmed glasses and a backpack full of poetry books, her soft voice barely cutting through the chatter. Raj Patel, 38, an engineer from Mumbai who'd immigrated to the States but grew up hearing stories of the Himalayas from his grandparents, he was our unofficial expert on the mountain's lore, always quoting ancient texts with a solemn nod. Carla Ruiz, 31, a yoga instructor from Seattle with tattoos snaking up her arms like vines, mandalas and Sanskrit symbols inked in black, and a Zen vibe that masked a competitive streak. And Vince Harlan, 45, the grizzled survivalist from Alaska who smelled like old beef jerky and wood smoke, his beard unkempt and his eyes sharp as knives, like he'd stepped out of a doomsday prepper documentary. The journey started with a bumpy flight into Tibet on a charter plane that rattled and groaned like it was held together with duct tape and prayers, the engines whining against the thin air as we crossed the Himalayas. The camera crew, 5 guys and 2 women, laden with gear, drones, and GoPros, buzzed around us like flies on fresh shit, capturing every awkward introduction and forced smile. The producers, a pair of slick Hollywood types in puffy jackets and headsets, hyped it up during the briefing. This is the ultimate test of body and mind, daily challenges to push your limits, then vote out the weak links to keep the group lean. Summit Mount Kailash and split the prize. Could be 100 grand each if you all make it, or the whole million if you're the last one standing. They glossed over the dangers, of course, focusing on the drama, the alliances, the betrayals. But as we descended toward the airstrip in western Tibet, Mount Kailash loomed in the distance like a jagged pyramid of unforgiving rock and perpetual snow, its peak piercing the clouds at over 21,000 feet. It's not the tallest mountain in the world, not by a long shot, but there's something otherworldly about it, a symmetry that makes it look carved by gods rather than eroded by time. I'd done my homework before signing on, or at least skimmed some articles. Kailash is holy ground to billions. Hindus see it as the abode of Lord Shiva, the destroyer and transformer, where he meditates in eternal bliss with his consort Parvati, the mountain itself symbolizing the axis of the universe. Buddhists call it Kang Rinpoche, the precious snow mountain, representing Mount Meru, the cosmic center where demigods dwell, and enlightenment awaits those who circumambulate its base on the sacred Kora pilgrimage. Jains believe their first Tirthankara achieved liberation here, and the ancient Bon religion of Tibet views it as the seat of their sky goddess. Legends swirl around it like the mists that cloak its slopes. It's said to be a spiritual library, housing ancient knowledge, a portal to hidden realms like Shambhala or Agartha, where enlightened beings guard secrets of immortality. Some tales whisper of extraterrestrial connections, or that the mountain cleanses souls but punishes the impure. And climbing it? That's taboo. No one's officially summited, not because it's impossible. Hell, Everest has been conquered thousands of times, but out of respect or fear. Locals say disturbing the peak invites divine wrath, a curse that binds souls to the stone, turning intruders into vessels for demons or dooming them to madness. Raj muttered about it during the flight, his voice low over the engine roar. The gods guard Kailash. Demons bind the unworthy, souls trapped in eternal torment, feeding on the flesh of trespassers. We all laughed it off, chalking it up to superstition. $1 million? I'd dance with the devil himself for that kind of payday, curse or no curse. Day one felt like paradise, a deceptive calm before whatever storm the mountain had brewing. We landed in the dry, high-altitude scrubland near Darchen, the gateway town bustling with pilgrims in colorful robes, prayer wheels spinning as they chanted mantras. The air was crisp and thin, biting at your lungs with each breath, carrying the faint scent of incense and yak dung fires. The sun hung high, turning the surrounding valleys a shimmering gold as we shouldered our packs, 40 pounds each, stuffed with freeze-dried meals, thermal layers, and climbing gear, and hit the base trails. These were gentle paths at first, winding through meadows dotted with wildflowers and grazing sheep, leading us to our first campsite near Lake Mansaravar, a crystal-clear body of water so blue it looked photoshopped. Legends say it was created from the mind of Brahma, the creator god, its waters pure enough to wash away lifetimes of karma. Bathing in it is supposed to grant spiritual rebirth, but we weren't there for enlightenment, just the game. The challenge that day was a team-building rope course rigged by the crew in a narrow gorge. Swinging bridges over chasms, zip lines across rushing streams fed by glacial melt, and climbing walls bolted to boulders. We scrambled over moss-slicked logs, muscles burning, hearts pounding, the cameras catching every grunt, laugh, and curse. Sarah twisted her ankle on a bad landing, her face contorting in pain, but she powered through with gritted teeth, flashing those perfect pearly whites for the drone hovering overhead. Always the influencer, turning agony into content. Derek showboated, scaling the wall like a spider, while Mia surprised everyone by belaying with quiet efficiency, her bookish demeanor hiding a core of steel. Tom, poor guy, struggled the most, his gut getting in the way as he huffed and puffed like an old freight train derailing. At the end, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in oranges and pinks, we gathered in a circle for the vote, torches flickering, the producers prompting us with leading questions to amp up the drama. Tom got the boot. He'd lagged too far behind, holding up the group. "No hard feelings," he said with a weak grin, clapping a few backs before the chopper's rotors thumped in the distance, whisking him away into the twilight. Relief washed over the rest of us. We were down to 9, the prize pot feeling a tad richer. That night, around the crackling campfire, with the lake lapping softly at the shore, Mark and I shared a flask of whiskey he'd smuggled in his boot, the amber liquid burning warm against the creeping chill. The stars overhead were a riot, so bright and numerous they hurt your eyes, unpolluted by city lights, like diamonds scattered on black velvet. "This is going to be easy," he whispered, his calloused hand brushing mine in a way that sent a spark up my arm. I leaned into him, the mountain silhouette watching us like a silent sentinel. For a moment, it all felt right. Adventure, camaraderie, the promise of fortune. But deep down, in that quiet space where doubts whisper, I wondered if Raj's tales held a kernel of truth. What if Kailash wasn't just rock and ice? What if it was alive, waiting? Day 2 ramped it up, the producers cranking the dial on the challenges to separate the contenders from the pretenders, all while the cameras rolled to capture the sweat, the strategy, and the simmering tensions that make for good TV. We'd broken camp at dawn by Lake Mansarovar, the water still as glass, reflecting Kailash like a mirror to another world. Legends I'd half remembered from a quick Google search before the trip said bathing in it could cleanse your sins across 5 lifetimes. But we didn't have time for spiritual dips. We were here to win. The trail led us into dense rhododendron forests that cloaked the lower slopes, thickets of twisted branches bursting with pink and red blooms, their petals carpeting the ground like confetti from a forgotten party. The air hummed with the buzz of bees and the distant call of cuckoos, a deceptive serenity that belied the grind ahead. The challenge was a navigation trial, old-school orienteering through the tangled underbrush, using battered compasses and topographic maps that crinkled in our hands like ancient parchment. Our packs were loaded heavy, 50 pounds now, crammed with tents, stoves, and emergency rations that dug into our shoulders like insistent fingers. Derek took point like he owned the damn place, his Colorado climbing ego on full display, barking orders with that smug grin. "Left at the fork, idiots, don't you read contours?" But Mia, our quiet librarian, surprised the hell out of us all. She'd been poring over the map during breakfast, her glasses slipping down her nose, and spotted a shortcut through a hidden ravine that shaved an hour off our time. "It's there, see? The elevation lines dip just enough," she said softly, but with a confidence that shut Derek up for a blessed minute. Lisa, though, God, Lisa complained the whole way, her Miami accent slicing through the forest like a chainsaw, griping about blisters, the humidity making her hair frizz, how the bugs were out for blood. Her voice grated like nails on chalk, turning every step into an endurance test of patience. We emerged from the woods by late afternoon, scratched and triumphant, the crew high-fiving us as they packed up their drones. The vote that evening was brutal but quick. Lisa was out, labeled a morale killer by unanimous consensus. She spat, "Bitch," at Sarah on her way to the chopper, her eyes flashing fury, but we didn't care. We were down to 8, the prize feeling closer, that $1,000,000 splitting into bigger shares. As the sun set, painting the mountain's flanks in hues of pink and lavender, Mark and I stole away to a rocky overlook, away from the others' chatter. The breeze carried the faint, sweet rot of decaying flowers, and far below, pilgrims traced the Kora path around Kailash's base, their tiny figures a reminder of the mountain's pull on the faithful. "You think we can do this?" I asked, leaning against his solid frame, my head on his shoulder. He nodded, his eyes steady on the horizon, that quiet smile flickering. "Together? Yeah, we've got this, Jenny." By day 3, the game shifted gears into something rawer, more unforgiving. We hit the real climb, leaving the gentle foothills for the mountain's true face. The trail narrowed to a goat path, switchbacking up sheer granite faces where the wind howled like a living thing, whipping through crevices with a mournful wail that raised the hairs on my neck. We were above 15,000 feet now, the air thinning to a razor edge, each breath a labored gasp that left you dizzy, your lungs screaming for more oxygen. The crew lugged their equipment with grunts and curses, tripods, batteries, those annoying drones buzzing overhead like mechanical vultures for aerial shots that would make the show pop on screen. To mitigate the risks, we roped together in pairs, me with Mark, his steady presence a lifeline. Sarah with Derek, her influencer perkiness clashing with his machismo. Mia with Raj, her bookish calm complementing his thoughtful demeanor. Carla with Vince, her yoga flexibility a counter to his rugged bulk. The views were godlike, almost worth the burn in our thighs. Endless ridges of snow-capped peaks folding into mist-shrouded valleys, where rivers glinted like silver threads weaving through the landscape. But that's when it started. Subtle at first, creeping in like fog off a lake. I thought it was altitude sickness hitting early, shadows flickering at the edge of my vision like ethereal figures darting behind boulders, vanishing when I turned to look. Sarah swore she heard whispers in the wind, faint calls of names, her own, her sister's, lost loves, carried on the gusts. Probably just echoes bouncing off the rocks. Vince grumbled through his beard, but his face was pale, his knuckles white on his trekking poles. Raj had warned us again that morning, drawing from his family's tales. In Hinduism, Kailash is Shiva's eternal home, where he sits in meditation, his third eye capable of reducing intruders to ash. Buddhists see it as the palace of Chakrasamvara, a deity of supreme bliss, but one who guards against the profane. Climbing it defiles the axis mundi, he'd said, the pillar connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld. The Bon shamans speak of wrathful spirits, demons bound to protect it, cursing those who ascend with madness or worse. We'd rolled our eyes, but now, with the mountain pressing in, those words lingered like smoke. We camped that night on a precarious ledge at around 17,000 feet, our tents flapping wildly in the relentless wind, stakes hammered into frozen ground that cracked like glass under the mallet. The temperature plummeted after sunset, our breaths frosting the air inside the nylon walls, and sleep came in fitful bursts. I woke around 2 a.m. to Carla screaming from her tent, a blood-curdling sound that pierced the night like a siren. We rushed out, headlamps slicing the darkness, to find her thrashing in her sleeping bag, eyes wide and unseeing, clawing at invisible hands. "They're pulling me down, into the rock! Get them off!" she yelled, her tattooed arms flailing. It took Vince and Derek to pin her, Carla's body convulsing as if electrocuted, until she finally calmed, sobbing about dreams of skeletal figures dragging her into abyssal cracks. We chalked it up to a nightmare, maybe hypoxia playing tricks, but no one slept after that. Morning brought worse. Vince, out for an early piss, found boot prints circling our camp, deep, deliberate impressions in the thin snow, larger than any of ours, leading in a perfect ring before vanishing abruptly into solid rock, no trail out. "What the fuck?" Derek muttered, kneeling to examine them. Raj went quiet, his brown eyes shadowed, murmuring about the mountain's spirits, the curse that bound demons to its slopes since time immemorial. "Kailash isn't for mortals," he said, his voice barely above the wind. "It devours the unworthy, trapping their souls to feed the guardians." Day 4, the hallucinations hit hard, no longer whispers, but full-blown assaults on our sanity, as if the mountain had awakened and turned its gaze upon us. We ascended through a boulder field, the path growing treacherous, ice-slicked ledges narrow as a tightrope, where one misstep meant a 1,000-foot plunge. The sun beat down mercilessly, reflecting off the snow to blind us, but clouds gathered ominously on the horizon. I saw my dead grandmother first, standing on a jagged outcrop ahead, her frail form in the floral dress she'd been buried in, beckoning me closer with a withered hand, her mouth moving in silent pleas. I froze, heart pounding like a drum in my chest, the rope jerking as Mark pulled up short behind me. "Jenny, what the hell, you okay?" he asked, his hand on my shoulder grounding me back to reality. I shook it off, blamed the thin air, but Derek wasn't so lucky. He laughed it off at first, mocking my ghost story, until midway across a traverse, he slipped, swearing something invisible shoved him hard in the back. He caught himself on a ledge, but his arm hung wrong, the bone jutting through torn skin in a compound fracture that made Lisa's nursing skills suddenly valuable, though she was gone. Blood soaked his sleeve, the metallic tang mixing with the ozone scent of impending storm. The crew radioed for evac, but static drowned the response, garbled voices lost in interference, as if the mountain jammed the signals itself. Thunderheads rolled in then, unnatural and fast, boiling up from clear skies like a witch's brew, dumping wet snow that blinded us in whiteout conditions. Visibility dropped to arm's length, the world a swirling void of cold and confusion. Mia vanished for an hour in the chaos. We shouted her name until our throats were raw, fearing she'd tumbled off, until we found her huddled in a crevasse, knees to chest, babbling about eyes in the dark watching her, glowing orbs that followed, judging. "They're hungry," she whispered, her glasses fogged and cracked. Raj helped her up, muttering more lore. Jain texts spoke of Rishabhanatha attaining moksha here, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, but warning that the mountain's energies could twist the impure into vessels for asuras, demonic beings that crave chaos. By day 5, doubt had curdled into outright terror, the thin veneer of competition shattering like ice underfoot. We weren't vying for votes or prizes anymore. We were surviving, clawing upward through hellish terrain, driven by some mad, collective hope that reaching the summit would break whatever spell gripped us, that the gods or demons or whatever lurked here would relent. The challenges were forgotten. No more rigged games, no tribal councils, just a desperate push, our bodies aching, minds fraying. Sarah started hearing voices then, real ones, not wind tricks, hissing in her ear like serpents in the grass, urging, "Jump, it's easier down there, peace in the fall." She fought it, plugging her ears with trembling fingers, her bubbly facade cracking into tears. But Vince was the one who snapped, the curse manifesting in flesh and fury. We were traversing a knife-edge ridge at 19,000 feet, the drop on either side a yawning abyss of fog and rock, when it happened. Vince turned on Carla without warning, his eyes black as bottomless pits, foam flecking his lips like a rabid dog. He lunged at her, knife in hand, the serrated survival blade from his pack meant for cutting rope or kindling, slashing wildly at her throat with a guttural roar that wasn't human. Carla screamed, dodging as blood poured from a deep gash on her arm, red blooming on the snow. Mark tackled him from behind, the two men rolling perilously close to the edge, but Vince was strong, unnaturally so, twisting like a snake with bones of rubber, his veins bulging as if pumped with venom. Derek and Raj piled on, finally subduing him with ropes, while the crew filmed it all, their faces ashen with horror. One cameraman, a burly guy named Alex, dropping his rig to help, the lens cracking on the rocks. We dragged Vince to a tent, tying him down like a beast, but he didn't struggle anymore. Instead, he laughed, a sound that wasn't his at all, layered with voices echoing from some abyssal choir, men and women, children and beasts, all grinding together like broken glass in a blender. "We are here to harm all of you," he rasped, his head lolling back, eyes rolling white. "Until you die by your own hands." His body convulsed then, skin rippling as if things slithered beneath it, shadows dancing under the flesh. Raj crossed himself, though he was Hindu, old habits from missionary schools, whispering prayers in Sanskrit, his face slick with sweat despite the cold. "Demons," he said, voice trembling. "The curse of Kailash. It binds the living to the dead, turning us into puppets for the wrathful ones who guard Shiva's throne." The mountain seemed to rumble in agreement, a low vibration through the ground, as if laughing along. That night, day 5, though time was losing meaning, the mountain claimed its first soul, as if it had been waiting, patient and ravenous, for us to weaken just enough. A storm roared in after dusk, unnatural in its ferocity, like the heavens themselves were enraged. The wind screamed through the crags at 19,000 feet, tearing at our tents with claws of ice, shredding the nylon like tissue paper. I lay awake in the dark, Mark's warmth beside me in our shared tent, listening to the gale howl like a chorus of the damned. Then came the cracks, sharp, staccato pops like gunfire, but not gunfire. Bones breaking, I thought, though I prayed it was just ice splitting under the storm's weight. Sleep was impossible. The cold seeped through my thermals, my teeth chattering despite 3 layers of fleece and a down bag rated for Arctic winters. At first light, we found him, Pete, one of the camera crew, a wiry kid from Boston, barely 24, with a goofy grin that had lightened our mood in the early days. He was at the base of a cliff, 100 feet below our ledge, his body sprawled like a discarded puppet, limbs twisted at angles that made my stomach lurch. His legs were bent backward, his spine arched unnaturally, and his eyes, God, his eyes were gone, pecked out by scavenger birds, ravens or hawks that circled Kailash like sentinels. Blood had pooled beneath him, frozen into a crimson halo on the snow. No one saw him fall or heard it over the storm's fury, but Sarah, trembling as she clutched her parka, swore she'd felt hands, cold, insistent hands, push her toward the edge during the night, urging her to leap into the abyss. "I thought it was a dream," she whispered, her influencer poise shattered, mascara streaking her frostbitten cheeks, but it felt so real. We buried Pete shallow, scraping at the frozen ground with ice axes until our fingers bled, piling rocks over him for a makeshift cairn. There was no time for ceremony, no words to honor a kid who'd just been doing his job, filming our folly. The producer, a slick LA guy named Mitch in a pristine red parka that screamed he wasn't built for this, gathered us around, his face gray under his hood. "We're not filming a show anymore," he said, his voice shaking, the Hollywood swagger gone. "This is for the record now, so people know what happened to us." The cameras kept rolling though, protocol or instinct, I couldn't tell, but the crew's hands trembled as they adjusted lenses, their usual banter replaced by a grim silence. The drones stayed grounded. The batteries had died in the cold, or maybe the mountain didn't want its secrets broadcast. Day 6 blurred into a waking nightmare, the line between reality and hallucination dissolving like breath in the freezing air. We pushed higher, past 20,000 feet, where the oxygen was so scarce, every step felt like wading through molasses. The terrain was a labyrinth of ice walls and jagged spires. The trail, if you could call it that, reduced to a faint scar on the mountain's flank, slick with black ice that mirrored the roiling sky. Hauntings were everywhere now, not just tricks of the mind, but visceral, undeniable. I saw apparitions in the snow, rotting climbers, their faces half frozen, flesh peeling like old leather, clawing up from drifts with skeletal hands, their mouths gaping as they begged for warmth, for life. "Join us," they hissed, their voices carried on the wind, and I stumbled, nearly dragging Mark down with me. Derek, his arm still in a makeshift sling from his fall, broke his leg that morning. No push, he insisted, his voice shrill, but we knew better. He'd been inching along a ledge when his good leg buckled, a clean snap that echoed like a warning shot, leaving him screaming in the snow, his tibia piercing through his thermals. Invisible forces turned crueler, more deliberate. Rocks, some the size of fists, others like bowling balls, hurtled from above, dislodged by nothing we could see, one grazing Carla's shoulder, another catching Mia square in the temple. The impact cracked her skull, a sickening crunch we all heard, her glasses shattering as she crumpled. She died slow, blood freezing on her face in rivulets, her soft voice silenced forever as she gasped out half-formed words. Poetry, maybe, or a plea. We couldn't carry her, we barely had strength to stand. Raj, his eyes red from crying, covered her with a tarp, muttering mantras from the Rig Veda, his hands shaking as he tucked her into a crevasse like a makeshift tomb. "The mountain wants our flesh," he wept, his engineer's logic crumbling under the weight of terror. "The demons want our souls, to bind us here forever, like the pilgrims who never left." Raj tried to turn back that afternoon, driven by desperation or some ancestral instinct to flee the sacred. "We can't go up," he said, pointing to the path below, now buried under an avalanche that had swept through silently, erasing our retreat. The snow was pristine, untouched, as if the mountain had reshaped itself to trap us. "It's alive," he whispered. "Kailash is alive, and it hates us." Mark held me as we huddled in a windbreak, his strength cracking under the strain, his breath warm against my neck, but his hands cold as death. "We have to keep going," he said, his voice hollow, eyes haunted by something I couldn't name. "The summit's all we've got left." I wanted to believe him, to cling to his certainty, but the mountain's presence was palpable now, a weight in the air, a pulse in the stone, watching, waiting. Day 7 dawned in fog so thick it was like climbing through soup, the world reduced to shades of gray and white, the summit taunting us, so close yet veiled. Only 4 of us remained, me, Mark, Sarah, Raj. Carla had vanished in the night, her tent empty, her gear untouched, no tracks, no trace, as if she'd been plucked into the ether. Vince was still tied up, raving in his tent, his voices a cacophony we couldn't bear to hear, so we left him, praying he'd stay bound. The air was a knife in our lungs, each step a battle against gravity and dread. The voices were everywhere now, laughing, screaming, promising peace if we just let go, let the mountain take us. Sarah succumbed first. One moment, she was roped to us, her blonde hair matted with ice, muttering about her sister's voice calling from below. The next, she drew her knife, cut the rope with a single slash, and stepped off the ledge into the void, a serene smile on her lips, like she was walking into a lover's arms. The fog swallowed her scream before it could echo. Raj was next, his calm unraveling into madness. His eyes turned wild, black as Vince's had been, his voice a guttural snarl as he lunged at me with a knife. Carla's knife, I realized, its blade crusted with her blood. Mark fought him off, wrestling him to the ground, but Raj's blade found his side, slicing through his parka into flesh. Mark staggered, blood soaking the snow in a spreading stain, his face pale but his jaw set. "Run, Jenny," he gasped, clutching the wound, crimson seeping through his fingers. I didn't. I couldn't leave him, not after everything. I dragged him upward, my arms burning, my vision swimming, the summit breaking through the clouds like a judgment, sharp, unforgiving, its peak a black spire against a sky that bled red at the edges. As we crested, the voices swelled to a roar, a deafening chorus of anguish and rage that seemed to pour from the stone itself. Mark's eyes changed, blackening like oil, his face twisting into something not him. "Join us," he whispered, his voice a multitude, men, women, children, things, layered into a single awful sound. His hands closed on my throat, strong as iron, squeezing with a strength that wasn't his, wasn't human. I thrashed, gasping, my nails raking his arms, but his grip was relentless, the mountain's will coursing through him. I don't know how I broke free. Maybe I pushed him, maybe I clawed his eyes, or maybe the mountain let me go, sated by its toll. He tumbled backward, vanishing into the mist with a scream that wasn't his, swallowed by the abyss. I collapsed at the summit, alone, the wind howling my name. Jenny, 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 like a chant from the void. The $1 million was a joke, a lure to draw us into this trap. The curse wasn't about dying, I realized, my breath ragged, my hands trembling as I scratched these words into the last camera's casing, its lens cracked but still recording. It was about living with what you'd done, betraying, surviving, killing to save yourself. The demons had won, claiming flesh and souls, binding us to Kailash's wrath. If anyone finds this, the footage, my words, stay away. Kailash isn't holy. It's hell, a throne of gods and demons that devours the living and damns the rest. I'm still here, but I'm not sure I'm me anymore. The wind knows my name, and it's calling.